Hi, this is Professor Favors, and so I want to come to you with a lecture about fragments and how to correct sentence level errors. And then I want to review complex sentences, so that's your ICDC pattern, and then your DC, comma IC. Also, compound sentences, comma splices and run-ons, previous methods, so that method number one, method number two, method number three, and then your 5 simple sentence patterns. So, this is the lecture on fragments and correcting sentence level errors. This lecture reviews complex sentences as reflected in the ICDC and DCIC uh, dynamics, which will help you to understand fragments. This lecture reviews compound sentences using comma splices and run ons, previous methods for compound sentences, including method number one, fanboys, method number two, semicolon by itself, and then method number three, semicolon plus conjunctive adverb plus comma. This lecture also reviews 5 simple sentence patterns as important to the discussion. You can find all assignments, lectures, quizzes in the course text titled Fundamentals of College Writing for additional help. So I'm going to go through the review quickly because you do have previous audio lessons on each of these grammar concepts. So the 5 simple sentence patterns you can find on pages 29 to 36 and 41 to 45 in the course text. So the simple sentence is just simply a sentence that houses a subject and a verb and that makes sense without any additional phrases or words. Doesn't necessarily mean that the thought uh, behind the sentence is complete. It's just that it is a simple sentence. And a simple sentence is also called an independent clause. So we understand that Tom threw the ball, and then we also understand that John ran. Remember, we don't know the reasoning behind each of these each of these two sentences in terms of us understanding it from a complete thought. We just understand that a simple sentence and independent clause will house a subject and a verb. So, subject again, the who or what that performs the action. The subject can also be the who or what about which a statement is made. So, the cat chased the mouse. Who chased the mouse? The cat. Verb is a word that shows action or links the subject to words that describe or identify it. So always pay attention when you see the word link. That means linking verb. Linking verbs are part of the be verb family. So the quarterback fumbled the ball. Tony Romo is the Cowboys quarterback. A phrase, a group of words without a subject and a verb. Muddy feet, flowing water on the floor, the red car. Clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. It just depends upon what type of clause it is. So the dog is sleeping, which would be a simple sentence independent clause. After the class ends, so I just stopped there, right? So after the class ends, the first thing we want to know is, okay, what happened after that? So that's your fragment. That's also a dependent clause. Remember, the dependent clause is formed when you when you place a dependent word in front of an independent clause, making it a dependent clause. So after in this particular sentence fragment is the dependent word. But if we didn't have after and we capitalize the T in the class ends, that will be an independent clause. But when you place a dependent word before the independent clause, it becomes a dependent clause, which can also function as a fragment. Remember, when it comes to dependent clause, independent clause, that the dependent clause is the baby needs the mother. So when you are solving or resolving a grammar issue with a dependent clause, the way that you do that, which is by adding an independent clause. So after the class ends, comma, the students walked outside to the courtyard. So that's your independent clause, which is a mother, and a mother is an adult and can function without the baby. The mother does not need the baby to be an adult, but the baby needs the mother in order to function as a baby. So sentence patterns, remember these much earlier in the semester. So subject verb, compound subject verb, subject compound subject, compound verb, then verb subject verb compound subject. And then remember for compound sentences, there's method number one, which you can find in on pages 47 to 43, and that's your comma plus fanboys. And so if you look at that in terms of simple versus compound, we understand that Lynn likes to eat pickles. Now, we don't know why, but it's still considered a simple sentence as well as an independent clause. Doesn't mean the sentence or the thought behind the sentence is complete. But when we want to create a compound sentence, we can do so in three ways. These are your three methods. So we can add a fanboy, which will be comma fanboy. We can add a semicolon in the same place that you added the comma and the fanboy. You stay within that same area of the next sentence and add a semicolon. And the same exact thing for adding a conjunctive adverb, which is semicolon, conjunctive adverb, comma. So these are your methods. Remember, method number 1, method number 2, method number 3. And then when you are looking at method number 1 for exercises, that's your comma fanboys. And so remember, you can always use each sentence and change each sentence using all three methods. Also remember, if you do not want to create a compound sentence, or you want to separate two sentences that are in a compound sentence, but you want to make them individual, the best way to do that is just to add a period after the first sentence and then begin the next sentence. Method number 2, semicolon by itself, understanding that when you are joining two or more simple sentences, creating a compound sentence, and you can do so with a semicolon. The semicolon, everything on the left side of the semicolon just further helps us to understand what's on the right side, and vice versa. Method number 2, we understand that we are creating a compound sentence, separating them by a semicolon. And so remember that we had some insight about run-ons and comma splices, right? Because if you place a comma in between Jane likes to eat, she likes to eat pickles, that's your comma splice. If there is no comma and you are running the sentences together, that's a run-on. And so you use any of the methods that you see here to correct the sentence. So essentially read the very first sentence to the very end, and then read the next sentence, and you'll know which one is one sentence, one independent clause, and what is another. So then we have method number 3, which is your semicolon, conjunctive adverb plus comma, and you're still joining two or more simple sentences, independent clauses, using these three methods. So method number 3, we remember the use of for example. Furthermore, so always remember that the for example that you might use will have some relation to the fanboys that you use. So it's the same kind of meaning. So in addition will be for and, right? But would be for however, or however would be for but. Okay. So correcting comma splices and run-ons. So we understand that we can find this on pages 97 to 99. Comma splice happens when two independent clauses are separated by a comma, right? And so then we need to correct this sentence here when there is a comma. You see this example grammar concept here that you would actually bring in. So she started to save 10% of her weekly paycheck. Okay, run on when you run two independent clauses together. So we understand in the same place that we mark the comma, we can create a fanboy, we can end a sentence and begin another, right? We have different options. So here are your 4 standard methods: ending a sentence with a period, and then beginning the next sentence with a capital letter, then or inserting a comma and fanboy, inserting a semicolon by itself, inserting a semicolon plus conjunctive adverb plus comma. When you understand your previous methods, then it might be easier then for you to understand what the fragment looks like. So revising sample sentence, remember there was a sample comma splice, sample run-on, and we just revised it using those previous methods. And then when we want to join simple sentences and dependent clauses, that you can find that on pages 75 to 86 in the course text. And so that's your ICDC, DC, comma, IC. And so remember, when you place the dependent word um, within the sentence, you don't need a comma before or after it. Okay. When you introduce the sentence with the dependent word, which will create a dependent clause, then the comma comes after the full dependent clause. So, how to create one: dependent word plus independent clause. So, even though is your dependent word, Lynn likes to eat pickles is your independent clause. Forgot that period there. So the dependent word will be the baby, even though, and the Lynn likes to eat pickles would be the mother independent clause. So these are examples of dependent words. So you did very well on those quizzes when it came to this. I thought you took to this very quickly. And then reviewing the differences, simple sentence, Lynn likes to eat pickles, compound sentence, adding one of the methods, and then your complex sentence, knowing what type of dependent word you're going to use and then where you want to place it. So if it's within the middle, if it's within the sentence, of course, no comma before or after. If you're using it to introduce, then it's a comma after the full dependent clause. So we had examples, right, of where we would place a sample dependent word. Okay. And then now we are at fragments. So you can find this discussion on fragments sentences on pages 91 to 93. So a fragment is defined as a group of words that does not have a subject or a verb or does not create a complete thought. Within the grammar context, a fragment is called a sentence fragment. So we understand here are your sentence categories, right? And these are just kind of like a review again. So sentence, group of words that express a complete thought about something or someone. It houses both the subject and a verb. I painted my room yellow. It, a complete thought can still be sort of arguable, right? Because we would want to know why she painted the room yellow. Okay. Independent clause, a complete statement that can stand by itself as a sentence. It houses both a subject and a verb. Jane painted her room yellow. Then a dependent clause that precedes an independent clause, it needs an independent clause for it to be complete. So because it is Jane's favorite color, that will be your independent clause. And also you would place a comma there. Okay. And then after that, you would add an independent clause. So fragment patterns, you have dependent word, ing or two fragments, added detail fragments, missing subject fragments, missing verb fragments. So I didn't do this before, so I'm just going to kind of do it now. Okay. And so if you look at dependent word, because it is my favorite color, immediately we want to add a period because a lot of times we write the same way we talk. And so instead of adding a period, we would need to drop that period and add a comma. So walking to the park, okay, so what is going on that I'm walking to the park, right? Or to play soccer, what is going on that I'm going to play soccer? Same thing, added detail, such as guinea pigs and ferrets. So then this is likely going to come after an independent clause, which would create a comma that precedes it. Missing subject, have plans for the party on Friday. So who has plans? Missing verb, the student studying for the test. The student is studying for the test. So how would you correct it? Let's look at how we would correct it. So based on the sentence fragment type, there are various methods for correcting fragments. So attaching method number one, attach a dependent clause to an independent clause, right? Because it is my favorite color, comma, I painted my room yellow. So now we know a reason why, and it sort of completes the thought as well. So that's your DCIC. I painted my room yellow because it is my favorite color, ICDC. Okay. We just place the because in the middle of the sentence, but that's your full dependent clause. Connect an ing or to fragment to the sentence before or after the fragment. So walking to the park, Amy found the lost dog. But if you have to be careful about that, because if we switched it around, Amy is walking to the park in the first sentence. But if you look at Amy found a lost dog walking to the park, the dog is walking to the park. I mean, again, it's arguable because she could still be walking to the park herself, but because the dog is closer to to walking to the park in this sentence here, then it looks like the dog is walking. It's like she found a lost dog that was walking to the park. Right. Method number three: connect an added detail fragment by using a comma and attaching it to the previous sentence. So, what is such as uh, guinea pigs and ferrets? Okay, these are what we would call unusual pets, right? We don't usually have them as pets. So then Fiona likes unusual pets, comma, such as guinea pigs and ferrets. Method number four: change the fragment to an independent clause by adding a subject or verb or both. So remember, have plans for the party on Friday, because that's how we talk. If we were on the phone with someone, we talk a certain kind of way. But for a sentence, to create a sentence that is grammatical, we need a subject. And so then now we know that the subject, we, is performing the verb have, or I think have is like a helping verb. And then method number five: create a helper for the ing verb. So helpers include the conjugated forms of the be verb: is, am, are, was, were, and will be. So the student is studying for the test, right? She's doing something, and is studying is too complicated to get into certain verb forms, but is studying would be present progressive, right? That is started somewhere in the beginning, in the present, and is continuing. So is studying is something that is continuing. So this is Fragments. This is your main lecture with reviews of the previous lectures. Thank you very much for listening.